At precisely 7:38 p.m., the lights in all 80 luxury smart villas blinked, went dark, and along with them every thermostat, wine cooler, and bidet in the exclusive gated community of Silverstone Estates. The abrupt blackout engulfed the entire neighborhood like a ravenous shadow, leaving only the dim screens of fading smartphones, and the unified shock of residents who had never known real discomfort. Chaos broke out quicker than anyone could mutter. Homeowners Association. Intelligent ovens wailed their final alerts in a symphony of digital agony. A voice cried out in authentic fright, "My Tesla won't charge." The groan of motorized gates coming to a stop reverberated down the roads as alarm systems shut down in sequence. In contrast, I struck a match and ignited a kerosene lantern inside my modest ranch cabin with the calm precision of a man who had long anticipated this very scenario, switched on my diesel generator that hummed like a satisfied feline, and poured myself a hefty measure of bourbon with the tranquil assurance of someone who had warned them precisely what was coming. All attention shifted frantically toward the HOA clubhouse, that shrine to administrative excess and small-minded dominance. Its bulbs were extinguished as well, casting their hallowed gathering hall into the identical void they had once attempted to force upon me. It was then that Sandra Whitmore, chairperson of the HOA board, despot of the dead-end streets, and struggling multi-level marketing sovereign of scented candles, understood with growing dread that I was not merely an obstinate ranch holder. I was the grid. I was their salvation, and they had just severed ties with me. I'm Logan Price. And this is the tale of how one power-obsessed HOA president discovered that true power occasionally stems from literal electricity. I'm a former electrical engineer, now mostly retired, and steward of my late grandfather's lakeside ranch, a parcel he purchased in 1965 when this region was simply untamed fields and promise. That was far earlier than Silverstone Estates, with its affected artisan pet parks and contemplation gardens, had even appeared in any developer's vision. My property occupied what the power companies term a critical junction, the precise location where the HOA's buried electrical supply ran straight through an easement granted 40 years prior. It had been a straightforward deal that functioned flawlessly for generations. The cables crossed my land. I granted entry for the utility crews, and everybody received their power without complication. It remained unproblematic until I chose to upgrade and mounted solar arrays on my barn roof, installed a cutting-edge battery bank in my equipment shed, and erected a fresh building to maximize my energy efficiency and shrink my environmental impact. That's when Sandra Whitmore, in her full, spray-tan splendor, charged me with what she labeled unauthorized electrical tampering. She appeared on my doorstep, gesturing wildly with her acrylic nails as she proclaimed my installation an act of aesthetic sabotage against neighborhood guidelines. She demanded in a piercing tone that I instantly sever ties from what she repeatedly referred to as her grid, as though she individually possessed the power network. Her complexion shifted to a fascinating violet hue when I clarified that I wasn't linked to her grid, rather, her grid depended on passage through my land. Sandra produced what she termed an official cease and desist letter, printed on HOA stationery she had evidently created herself, using excessive fonts and decorative clip art frames. The paper alleged my renewable system was generating a magnetic field imbalance across the enclave, though I strongly suspected she had simply searched for impressive-sounding jargon and pieced it together. She maintained that the mere glimpse of my battery inverter, scarcely noticeable from the street, undermined the enclave's meticulously crafted rustic elegant atmosphere. When I noted that her own residence featured a satellite dish roughly the diameter of a child's wading pool, she puffed up and insisted that it was acceptable because it had been painted beige to blend with her siding. She'd levied a $100 daily penalty for violation of aesthetic rules that she appeared to invent on the spot. The citations grew ever more imaginative, listing offenses such as irregular electron circulation patterns and neglect of visible electrical coherence. I attempted to clarify, as courteously as my tolerance permitted, that my configuration did not merely supply my ranch. Because of the aging infrastructure the HOA had ignored for years and a lapsed service agreement with the utility provider that they had seemingly overlooked. My array was, in fact, steadying and supporting the whole HOA network. Without my equipment, their high-end connected houses would suffer voltage dips whenever anyone operated their pool pump and wine chiller simultaneously. Sandra countered my engineering details by hiring what she described as an impartial energy advisor who resembled a vendor of herbal supplements at medieval reenactments and likely subscribed to theories that wireless signals cause tumors. This fellow and I employ the term generously strolled across my land, wielding what looked like a doctored metal detector while emitting worried murmuring sounds. Following an hour of this theatrics, he pronounced my acreage unbalanced and afflicted with profound electrical energy misalignment. I clenched my jaw so fiercely that I drew blood to avoid bursting into laughter right in his presence. 2 days afterward, lacking any lawful basis or due notification, they coordinated with a contact at the utility provider to disconnect my electricity. The delicious irony escaped no one, least of all me. To accomplish it, they had to circumvent their own easement, spawning what would soon prove a costly headache for them. I observed from my window as Sandra oversaw the operation, nearly prancing with delight as the service vehicle departed. She actually snapped a selfie before my now dim residence, undoubtedly destined for the HOA Facebook page. Accompanied by some snide remark about upholding community values, I extended them a courteous warning because, contrary to what Sandra would later allege in her emotional board testimony, I am not heartless. I dispatched a meticulously phrased email to the full HOA board stating, in accordance with your request and the measures executed today, I have discontinued providing supplementary power stabilization to the Silverstone Estates network. I strongly advise contacting your utility provider without delay to secure standalone backup alternatives, as my installation will no longer offset your infrastructural shortcomings. Best wishes with your forthcoming electrical requirements. They disregarded it entirely. Sandra Evan replied all with a solitary thumbs-up emoji, which I promptly printed and framed as a keepsake. I doubt any of them grasped my meaning, or perhaps they assumed I was exaggerating. They were soon to discover that when an electrical engineer explains power systems to you, it pays to pay attention. Then arrived the season's initial genuine heatwave, a merciless run where temperatures soared past 100 for 3 consecutive days. Every resident in Silverstone Estates dialed their air conditioners to polar extremes. Demand surged explosively, and absent my configuration, delivering voltage regulation and load distribution to their strained setup. The foreseeable occurred. The primary transformer at the key junction overheated, triggering a domino collapse as elegant as it was inevitable. Boom! The explosion reverberated over the lake like thunder on a cloudless afternoon. Every connected device in 80 households expired at once in a chorus of digital demise. Espresso machines, intelligent refrigerators, those absurd internet-connected bidets all succumbed in a flash. Perimeter gates malfunctioned in the open state, rendering the exclusive enclave anything but secure. Filtration pumps locked up with theatrical screeching. Sandra's $12,000 aeroponic herb display, which she insisted was for cooking, though the neighborhood knew it was purely decorative, wilted into a drooping thicket of misery as its automated irrigation failed. The fallout was swift and magnificent. My telephone, sustained by my flawlessly operational independent setup, started ringing incessantly. Abruptly, I became the most sought-after neighbor. Board members who had ignored me for half a decade now pleaded for me to temporarily restore auxiliary power sharing. They tossed around terms like vital infrastructure collaboration and urgent mutual aid protocols, as if corporate buzzwords could magically resurrect their current. Sandra herself appeared on my doorstep the following dawn, her typically impeccable coiffure disheveled from a sweltering, sleepless night. She proposed to reassess the appearance of my equipment building in a sincere spirit, her tone wavering as she spoke. In the background, a procession of exasperated Tesla drivers had realized their premium electric cars had become pricey yard decorations. The pleading in her gaze nearly stirred pity in me. Nearly. The HOA's on-call electrician, a seasoned professional who truly understood the trade, examined the easement junction and the chaos they had wrought attempting to reroute around my land. He shook his head deliberately and informed them with thinly veiled astonishment, "You instructed the person steadying your entire network to cease. That's why everything crashed so spectacularly. Count yourselves fortunate it didn't affect the surrounding areas." The urgent repair quote totaled $200,000, excluding reimbursement for countless destroyed connected appliances. The power company further notified them that their lapsed service agreement required renewal at present-day pricing 3 times their previous rate. The expressions on the directors' faces, as the full scope of their blunder dawned, were beyond value. I might have captured a discreet photograph from my window for private archives. I presented my conditions plainly and courteously. I sought signed apologies from every director admitting their misjudgment. I insisted on comprehensive agreement amendments acknowledging my land's essential function in their supply chain. I called for the total cancellation of all levied penalties plus accrued interest, and I demanded everything documented, notarized, and recorded at the county clerk's office. Additionally, I stipulated that Sandra deliver a personal apology before the full membership at their upcoming gathering. They consented to every term. Sandra's handwriting on the remorse letter trembled, yet she dotted each I and crossed each T with flawless penmanship. The mortification in her expression as she delivered the packet of papers was the finest accompaniment to bourbon I have ever savored. The remaining directors struggled to meet my eyes while affixing their names, each recalling how they had dismissed my cautions mere days earlier. I restored service gradually, with the flair of a seasoned conductor, one sector at a time, inserting deliberate intervals for effect. I began with the clubhouse, then progressed through the streets, prioritizing those who had treated me most kindly over time. Sandra's cul-de-sac inexplicably ranked dead last, a detail she registered but wisely left unmentioned. The gratitude evident as lights reignited throughout homes bordered on heartwarming. Sandra attempted to express appreciation before the assembled board at the subsequent session, dutifully fulfilling my mandate for public contrition. Her scripted remarks about gaining important insights into facility oversight resembled a coerced confession. Upon conclusion, I rose and presented her with a bill for my newly established advisory services. The chamber fell hushed as she scanned the figures, her complexion draining through various pallors. I presently bill the HOA $1,800 monthly to utilize my stabilization array. They further compensate me handsomely per hour for upkeep, alongside on-call premiums that would impress even a plumber. The agreement, drafted with assistance from a highly entertaining attorney, is airtight and spans a decade with auto-renewal clauses. Sandra's faltering scented candle venture certainly cannot absorb the added burden. Explaining her transition from a luxury Audi to a pre-owned Honda, the directors even inquired whether I might contemplate a board seat, citing my engineering knowledge as beneficial for upcoming utility planning. I replied, deadpan, that I would sooner embrace a live high-voltage terminal than endure their sessions, though I valued the invitation. The uneasy chuckles that ensued implied uncertainty about my seriousness. Nowadays, I enjoy my dawn brew beneath the soft radiance of my photovoltaic illumination, while Sandra trots by my fence line, feigning obliviousness despite our mutual awareness. She has shed pounds from the strain, and her once confident stride has yielded to the slumped posture of one who absorbed a harsh lesson. Genuine authority derives not from regulations, penalties, or design codes. The upscale residences of Silverstone Estates now operate seamlessly, their serenity and luxury sustained by the very individual they once sought to disconnect. Each recurring payment deposited into my account reinforces that the sweetest retribution is sheer indispensability. The transformer purrs reliably across my terrain, and I have affixed a modest sign beside it declaring essential infrastructure. Refrain from provoking the proprietor. At the most recent HOA assembly I visited solely for amusement, they debated fresh policies promoting courtesy toward residents hosting key utility pathways. Sandra was obliged to recite the motion aloud, her delivery faltering on the phrase, indispensable community allies. The ballot was Naturally, unanimous. As the session adjourned, she hurried past me, yet not before I overheard her whisper a vow never again to challenge an engineer. The ultimate blow to Sandra's pride arrived when regional media covered the saga. The banner, "HOA Leaders Botched Power Maneuver Costs Enclave Thousands," featured an unflattering snapshot of Sandra taken during the outage. The piece exploded across online forums dedicated to association nightmares, enshrining Sandra as the emblem of executive excess. She endured official reprimand from the overseeing organization and was ousted in the subsequent ballot by a tally of 79-1. Her solitary supportive vote appeared half-hearted even to her. She lingered at the lectern as the outcome was announced, lips parting and closing silently like a stranded fish, struggling to accept that her era of dominance had concluded in utter abasement.